Good afternoon, boys and girls, and to all the adults listening on today. Thank you for tuning into Aunt Pat's Story Time. Today's story is entitled Miss Nelson is Missing by Harry Allard and James Marshall. Miss Nelson is an elementary school teacher that loses control of her class. One day, Miss Nelson was absent from school, and you could hear the boys and girls yelling, "Wow, now we can really act up." They yelled because they knew that they were going to get a substitute teacher. Boys and girls, listen very carefully to the story and see if you can answer the following question. Number one, what happened to Miss Nelson? Number two, why did her class become so upset about her being absent from school? Miss Nelson is missing. The kids in room 207 were misbehaving again. Spitballs stuck to the ceiling. Paper planes whizzed through the air. They were the worst behaved class in the whole school. Let's see. Look at Miss Nelson's class. They were throwing airplanes around. They threw spitballs at the ceiling. They had the trash can upside down, and they were acting really, really noisy in class while Miss Nelson was talking. "Now settle down," said Miss Nelson in a sweet voice. But the class would not settle down. They whispered and giggled. They squirmed and made faces. Here you see sweet Miss Nelson trying to get her class quiet. They were clowning and throwing airplanes in the air. They were whispering and giggling, and this little boy was making faces. Wow. They were even rude during story hour, and they always refused to do their lessons. "Something will have to be done," said Miss Nelson. Here you see this little girl standing on top of her head while Miss Nelson was trying to read a story, and this little boy was drawing pictures. Miss Nelson said something has to be done about this class. Let's see what is done. The next morning, Miss Nelson did not come to school. "Wow," yelled the kids. "Now we can really act up." They began to make more spitballs and paper planes. "Today, let's be just terrible," they said. "Not so fast," hissed an unpleasant voice. I wonder who the unpleasant voice was. Here we see the boys and girls happy Miss Nelson wasn't coming to class. One little girl was standing on top of her head. Let's see who the unpleasant voice was. A woman in an ugly black dress stood before them. "I am your new teacher, Miss Viola Swamp." And she tapped the desk with her ruler. "Where is Miss Nelson?" asked the kids. "Never mind that," snapped Miss Swamp. "Open those arithmetic books." Miss Nelson's kids did as they were told. Wow, Miss Viola Swamp looks really, really mean. Let's see what else happens. They could see that Miss Swamp was a real witch. She meant business. Right away, she put them to work, and she loaded them down with homework. Here we see Miss Swamp pointing her finger at the boys and girls. And one little kid saying she really means business. Here it is, you see the little girl doing her work, and guess what? All the problems are correct. And she loaded each of the kids down with homework. "We'll have no story hour today," said Miss Swamp. "Keep your mouth shut," said Miss Swamp. "Sit perfectly still," said Miss Swamp. "And if you misbehave, you'll be sorry," said Miss Swamp. The kids in room 207 had never worked so hard. Days went by, and there was no sign of Miss Nelson. The kids missed Miss Nelson. Here's Miss Swamp giving out orders, pointing her finger at the boys and girls. And here you see the boys and girls continuously looking outside, looking for Miss Nelson. Maybe we should try to find her, they said. Some of them went to the police. Detective McSmog was assigned to the case. He listened to their story. He scratched his chin. He said. I think Miss Nelson is missing. Detective McSmog would not be much help. Here we see the boys and girls at the police station, and here is Detective McSmog. Other kids went to Miss Nelson's house. The shades were tightly drawn, and no one answered the door. In fact, the only person they did see was a wicked Miss Viola Swamp coming up the street. If she sees us, she'll give us more homework. They got away just in time. Here you see Miss Viola Swamp, and you see the boys and girls running away from Miss Nelson's house. Maybe something terrible happened to Miss Nelson. Maybe she was gobbled up by a shark, said one of the kids. But that didn't seem likely. They were really trying to find out what happened to Miss Nelson. Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars, said another kid, but that didn't seem likely either. Here's a picture of a spaceship, and they said maybe she went to Mars, but that didn't seem likely either. I know, exclaimed one know-it-all. Maybe Miss Nelson's car was carried off by a swarm of angry butterflies, but that was the least likely of all. Here you see the kids over here trying to figure out what happened to Miss Nelson. And here you see Miss Nelson's car and a bunch of butterflies on it. Let's see what happens next. The kids in room 207 became very discouraged. It seemed that Miss Nelson was never coming back, and they would be stuck with Miss Viola Swamp forever. They heard footsteps in the hall. Here comes the witch, they whispered. Hello, children, someone said in a sweet voice. I wonder who it was. Here you see the children in class, and they were quiet and doing their work because Miss Viola Swamp did not play. It was Miss Nelson. Did you miss me, she asked. We certainly did, cried all the kids. Where were you? That's my little secret, said Miss Nelson. How about a story hour? Oh, yes, cried the kids. Miss Nelson noticed that during story hour, no one was rude or silly. What brought about this lovely change, she asked. That's our little secret, said the kids. Here we see Miss Nelson smiling because the kids were listening to story hour quietly. And here are the boys and girls smiling during story hour. Back home, Miss Nelson took off her coat and hung it in the closet, right next to an ugly black dress. When it was time for bed, she sang a little song. I'll never tell, she said to herself with a smile. Here's Miss Nelson in bed, and here's a black dress and a pair of black shoes on the floor in her closet. P.S. Detective McSmog is working on a new case. He is now looking for Miss Viola Swamp. Miss Nelson is missing. Boys and girls, before I go, I have one last question for you to discuss with your parents. Who is